everybody. Back again, once again, to talk about music, the things we love the most. One of the things we love the most, I shouldn't say what we love the most. And since Father's Day is right around the corner, I guess we shouldn't discard our children. uh, four friends. It's four friends this week again with Spencer again as a guest. We appreciate you joining us, Spencer. And we took on the task of cities. Now, this originally started a little behind the scenes as places, but then we realized, man, there's a lot of places in this world. So we narrowed it down to cities. And of course, cities, that also takes on a whole new dynamic itself. And, but I think we tackled it pretty well because you realize when there's a name or a title in the city, it doesn't necessarily talk about the city. And I'd say about 80% of these songs aren't really about the city itself. Now, cities evoke a lot of emotion with people. We all have our favorite cities and our cities that we've had bad situations in, places we love to go to. So, and I thought this covered kind of the whole dynamic of that. And I was telling these guys earlier, Dave wasn't here before we started, that this is what I consider a mixtape to the fullest extent in the fact that the first 8 songs all seem to flow together as a side A, and then you flip that tape over when Chocolate City starts. We'll get to that as a side B. So there's 8 songs that really seem to flow, and then there's 8 songs that are pretty eclectic, pretty different. And I thought that worked out pretty well because when you listen to this tape, that's what you get. You know, the first 8 songs all seem to flow well together, and then all of a sudden, boom, it takes a whole different version. So, what did you guys think initially?
Yeah, same. Basically, I didn't think of it literally as a division, but definitely the first several songs, particularly a little stretch there with guys who'd kind of been down and out and such, really went together. They fit well. I don't know how intentional that was, but they worked really well. And yeah, side two, and it really does start with your song "Chocolate City," which we'll get to.
Spencer?
Yeah, I definitely at least one song I remember on side one. Uh, I had a group of about 5 or 6 songs is all this time, and I remember slotting one of them specifically because it kind of dovetailed in a lot. I felt like with the song before it, and I probably did at least some of that on some of the other songs too. So yeah, I did feel like especially side one, like you say, flowed pretty well with themes and stuff like that. And also, yeah, side two kind of bounces around. So, yeah, same as Mike. I hadn't really thought of side one versus side two, but I think it really does work that way in the end.
I don't think we ever really look at, flow and those kind of things. I think oftentimes when we're preparing for these, we simply pick the songs that we kind of want to get out there or that we really like. And then as the playlist is developing, we we might have a tendency to go to a different tune or different thing. And then so we're never sure how it's going to get to how it comes out. But you're right, it kind of ended up that way with the first 8 and the second 8. But I have to give all of you some credit because it just seemed like there was a lot of synergy going on with some of the songs and some of the song choices, which sometimes it works good that way, and sometimes it's kind of a crapshoot. Um, and I think this time, for whatever reason, with themes and with the tempos and things with the music, um, I really like the playlist overall. I've it's going to be a go back to one often for me.
Okay, well, let's delve into it. And I was the one who got to kick it off, and I started with Atlantic City by the band, which I never did know this, but was written by Bruce Springsteen. So we talk about that because it sounds like a traditional band song, but man, Bruce Springsteen. And then Crescent City by Lucinda Williams, Mike's choice, of course. Of course, I say of course because he's already introduced us to a number of her songs. And then Walking in Memphis, which could be one of my favorite songs on this thing. Michael Cohen. I didn't know it came out in 1992. It was a hit back then, and I love that whole gospel type feel. Walking, he says it's a little autobiographical, and then of course Moon over Bourbon Street, which is Sting. I actually remember when that came out. I just think because everyone was kind of taken aback by this kind of new way that Sting, the new direction that Sting went into. So I thought all the four of those songs really worked well together, and they all had a different kind of story, you know. And I think those first four songs, that's why they work so well together. It was a story. It wasn't about the cities per se. Atlantic City's about the fall and rise of Atlantic City, so to speak. The Lucinda Williams song is about her childhood, you know. And then the Michael Cohen, he was kind of struggling, and so he visited Memphis, and then decided he was going to write this song because he kind of had writer's block. And then A Moon Over Bourbon Street with Sting going in a new direction and taking on that. So, you know, I thought all four songs worked effectively.
Yeah, me too. I'll just kind of a little bit individually. Atlantic City, I didn't realize it was when I first heard it several years ago that it was a Springsteen song first. It does. You know, if you hearing this and then hearing Springsteen's version, I still kind of think of it as a band song. But when you listen to Springsteen, you're like, oh well, yeah, that makes sense. You know, and he's a New Jersey guy and all that. I really like that they came back, you know, did a few more records, you know, after they broke up before. And so, and this is especially good one. I like the accordion and the mandolin and all that. The Crescent City, there's not, you know, New Orleans, not much to say about it. It's kind of about her youth and I guess coming back as an adult. I love her music, and I didn't realize this till years later, that kind of twang she excuse me, in her voice has its roots in coming from Louisiana. That twang used to drive me crazy. I don't know why I didn't like it. Somewhere along the way, completely flipped, and yeah, so now I love her. Walking in Memphis, I knew that one way back in the day. Heard it a lot on the radio. Like that one too. I've been to Memphis a couple of times. Drove by Graceland, but didn't sneak in through the gate like Elvis's ghost. And then Moon Over Bourbon Street, and maybe you answered this on your turn, but it seems like it's like I think it's a vampire, and
No, yeah,
is that based on any of the Anne Rice stuff, or
it
that
is.
influence him?
Yeah,
okay.
It was.
Because I know that was in New Orleans. So anyway, I like that. I had that record when we were talking about it, I confused it with his next record. But yeah, Dream of the Blue Turtles. And further what you're saying, he had a kind of a jazz band, some really great musicians. I saw him on that tour on that album. It was awesome.
So yeah, Dream of the Blue Turtles, like that whole album was phenomenal, and I just thought of that song with Sting. I'd been a huge Police fan, even though I kind of got in really late in the game. I mean, I was like, you know, so they broke up in basically 1982, 83, something like that. And I was like 12. So yeah, I was getting in late, but I had gotten all their past catalog at that point. But yeah, I do. I mean, I've never read anything specifically about the song, but it's hard to imagine it's not kind of coming out of that world that we were all living in at the time of Anne Rice and Interview with the Vampire and all that. And it does such a fantastic marriage of like the mood and the lyrics, you know, and obviously the musicianship, like Mike was talking about. Yeah, it's Atlantic City. I love that song. I guess I heard it first from Bruce Springsteen, so to me it was a little odd, but I loved the way it started with the mandolin strums, you know, and just the whole way it was put together. It was really, really good. Yeah, Lucinda Williams, I'm a huge fan. Just a little trivia from that. I was listening to it on Spotify, and there was one of the French phrases or Creole kind of Cajun phrases that she puts into the lyrics that I was like, oh, they have the lyrics on Spotify. What is she saying there? You know, maybe I can figure out what that is. And I looked at it, and it didn't seem to really match up in the Spotify lyrics with what I was hearing. Like there was an S in the series of words. So I went really digging for it. And basically, it's a part where she's saying that, you know, this phrase that's what we said. You know, we danced all night long, like all this stuff. And she was naming a song by Clifton Chenier, but his song title is actually even more of a corruption of the like French. It's like the I'm gonna flub it now, but the phrase was something like voulez ton bon ton or something like that, and it's really like voulez Tom's, like TEMPS, just like in, you know, Le Bon Ton Roulette, that thing. But I don't know if it was like his record company or if it's just like in really informal Cajun, you know, that they just, instead of Tom's, they make it Ton. So his was like Tom Bon Ton or something like that. Or I don't know, it was crazy different, but it really made me like think about language and, you know, how language makes you belong to groups, and how it doesn't really matter if you're saying things right. If people understand you, it can still be like a bonding thing for people. So anyway, I just thought that was really funny about that song. Like, they didn't transcribe her lyrics right on Spotify, and they only had it half transcribed right when her album originally came out, because the song from Clifton Chenier was completely wrong, you know, just like different words or different spellings. So it's just all what the internet can do for you. I don't know.
Right. I thought the first four really were great, set a great tone for the whole playlist. You know, until you said it, I had thought the same thing about that Atlantic City song, but I didn't go back and look at it or whatever. So when you mentioned just a few minutes ago that it was Bruce Springsteen, it all clicked for me, and I went, "Oh yeah, that's right, it was." But at the time we were listening to it, and then in this last week that I was listening to it, I didn't put the two and two together. Like Spencer said, you know, I like how it starts with the mandolin and doing all that, and then with the Crescent City, using the, you know, the violin and the stuff with that. But the cool thing is, as you already made mention of, you know, some of the lyrics and stuff in that Crescent City song. I like where she says, "My brother knows where the best bars are," and, you know, I'm walking with my sister and we're doing all these different things. My mom lives just outside of town, and, you know, it's really a real personal song about, you know, the city of New Orleans, and really takes you back there. Unfortunately, I haven't been there that often.
We went.
That's what I was just gonna say. Jose and I met. I was in a schoolhouse when I just got into the Air Force, and I was down in Mississippi. And Jose was, I think, at Richland College, I think at the time, in Dallas. And we said, well, why don't we go ahead and meet? And so we went there and saw Bob Dylan at the Kiefer Arena there, and then went to the French Quarter. And again, that was probably one of the only times, I think it's only the second time that I'd ever been to New Orleans and on Bourbon Street. And so this song really took me back there. And then the next song, "Walking in Memphis," the one I put on, you know, it's very recognizable as a hit song, all of that. But the fact that it has that piano cadence in it, and you'll see that same thing. I don't know if I intentionally did this, but three of my four songs really highlighted and focused on piano. And so, but all three of these first three songs were very mid-tempo. You know, had a similar type of beat and cadence to it. And then we hit "Moon over Bourbon Street," and it was just like it really came down. And at first, when I first listened to it, and we'll get into the song after that as well, it was pretty low key as well. You know, at first I thought, oh man, this is kind of a downer or whatever. But this week I listened to that song, and I wasn't familiar with this album or this song from Sting. Yeah, we all know Sting. We know the Police. I listened to some of that, but I was not familiar with this at all, or this new genre and style that he went into. And it took me back, and I had to listen to the song a couple of times to really appreciate it. And after I did, after probably on the third or fourth time, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing song. And the back, I mean, just the instrumentation, the orchestration, the woodwinds, the oboes and the clarinets and the contrabassoons and the sounds you hear in that, and they're not in the forefront. It's not like Dixieland jazz or something, right? No, it's like it's in the background. And you have to listen for it. And as you do, though, you're like, this is an amazing, amazing track. And so I was going to say, thanks, Spencer, for putting it on, because it made me realize, I go, oh, right, Sting is so cool. And he's such a great artist. And so, yeah, so that's kind of the four songs there. Oh, I was going to say one more thing about Walking in Memphis. But train left the station. Can't remember what it was. Oh, back to even to Crescent City. I liked some of the lyrics where she's talking about the Pontchartrain, the big lake there. Anytime you can add Pontchartrain into your lyrics, you're doing good. So anyway,
yeah, I find it interesting and kind of amusing that y'all are saying Luna Walking in Memphis was such a big hit. I had no clue. At the same time, Dave never heard, the Sting album. I thought, man, that was the biggest thing I could know. No one had never heard of that. So it's interesting that we are all in different places, and then with how we discovered this and how we learned this, I was like, oh, Michael Cohen, he was our new artist of the year. I didn't know that. But at the same time, Dave doesn't know that Sting. I mean, that thing was just massive. And but hey, we all lived in different realms. So then we moved on to the next four songs. We have Say Hello to Chicago by Neil Young, your classic Neil Young, although we did have a little complication there because I initially had the big band version, but this is a classic Neil Young on the piano. And then we had Desperado Under the Eaves, and then Little Rock, and then Henrietta, Indiana. And speaking of songs that really go well together, I thought, and they all are kind of thematic. They all deal with people's issues. They all deal with, people kind of down and out, a little melancholy, Desperados on the Eaves. We all know about, we all know Warren Zevon's name, but, to really delve into it, and then to delve into this song and, this guy struggling with his drinking in Los Angeles. And someone wrote that this was one of the top 20 Los Angeles songs about Los Angeles. So, and then Little Rock is another one where this guy's, again, struggling with, he hasn't drank in 19 days, but he misses his woman, and it's not the same living in Little Rock. And then we have Henry, Indiana, which is, I had never heard of, and thought this was just another gem in there with talking about a small town in Indiana. Now it's a fictional town. I live 60 miles away from Indiana, but I can identify with what he's talking about, not the fact that his father goes on a crime spree and starts killing people and stuff like that, but just the little things about industrial towns and how they can affect if a plant shuts down, how it affects the whole community. You see a lot of those small towns now that are, Main Street is pretty much bare, and then how it can drive these people into doing what they do. And so I thought all four songs just were so impactful on an emotional level as well.
Yeah, I'll second that. I think I keep saying that. Hello to Chicago. I kind of go through phases with Neil Young. I've gotten really way too much into his music, and then I kind of get burned out. And the last few years, it's been kind of more up and down because he's done some things I just can't quite get into. And I remember the name of is it like Movie Tone, or I forget the name of this record. This is off of. And but I didn't realize there was.
It's something like that, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, that's.
I was just going to say it's something Tone. I forget what the first part is.
And yeah, I still haven't heard the other version, but this is great. I got to see him once where it was just him on stage, and he had this pump organ, where he uses his feet, and he had a grand piano and some banjos and mandolins and a few guitars. One of them was Hank Williams' old guitar, one of his guitars. anyway, he this reminded me of that. He can get a lot of sound out of just him and a thing, but this one is so understated too. There's these gaps, kind of moments of almost silence. And I want to check that album out more. I really liked it. Just him and piano, right? Was there anything else?
Well, the other version is him with a big band, and it is
Oh,
almost a completely different song from that. So,
I think he plays the harmonica with himself.
oh, yeah, of course. I think that's actually like a part of his faith now,
right.
that harmonica, kind of like Dylan. And yeah. And then Desperado from the Eaves, Under the Eaves, excuse me. This is one when we were making this, someone had asked, why not Werewolves of London, which is a natural choice for this. And I love that song. It's a great song. But I wanted to kind of get this one out here because, it's lesser known by people who don't listen to his music. And it is, I read somewhere that he said this is probably his most personal, song about him. And he was, whether you can tell it through his music or not, he had a great capacity for music, a great talent. I forget who, he was some classical composer who lived in New York. I don't know, some very famous person. And we basically knocked on his door and kind of inserted him in there and kind of sort of became an understudy for a while. This is when he's a little kid. So yeah, he grows up, he was in that whole Los Angeles heavy partying scene, and he was almost one of the casualties of that. So a lot of his songs are about that, but this one, I just like the arrangement. I think it's produced by Jackson Browne, who also sings on it, as well as Carl Wilson from the Beach Boys. To me, it sounded like you hear that little bit of singing after the first part, and to me, it sounded like the Eagles. And so I looked it up, and it was really only, was it Randy Meisner or Souther? I don't know, one of those guys.
JD.
Yeah, Souther. Yeah. But yeah, I could go on and on about this song. I love it, but that'd be a little too self-centered. Little Rock. I lived in Little Rock. It's the only one of these towns I lived in. And when I was a kid, he mentions the Church of Christ. My parents went to the Church of Christ for a while there. I'm not sure it's the same one. It's a big town, but this one and the last one and the next one, Henrietta, Indiana, all involve people that are. This is really the kernel of what I was thinking about. They kind of go together. People that are down and out, alcohol abuse, history of whatever. Some of them turn out better than others. In Little Rock, he's finding his way. Some people think like 19 days. It's like 19 days. There's people that have 20 years, 50 years. But let me tell you, people that can make it to some people that can make it to 24 hours, it's a heroic effort. It's like, wouldn't say it gets easier, but 19 days is a big deal. So maybe he has some history with that and knowledge about that. I don't know, but it was a great song. Brought more of the faith kind of thing into it. And then Henrietta, Indiana is a very dark song. Am I right? I mean, it's your song, Spencer. I don't want to talk about it too much, but it sounds like he's about to repeat what his father did. He becomes the drinker, and I don't know. So yeah. Why don't you take it from there? What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. So Henrietta, Indiana, is Josh Ritter, who I had never heard of until my wife introduced me to him. But he really is interesting to me because he writes a lot about spirituality and especially Christianity. So I just sort of always get this vibe from him that he probably was really steeped in that when he was younger and has kind of made his way away from it. And I think he strikes a good balance in his writing. I was telling her earlier, he has a lot of songs that are really just fun and light, but he also has a lot of songs that really deal with serious things, and it's not always as potentially grim as this one. I think this one has a little wiggle room. It's a little ambiguous, so it's maybe not as bad as the worst possible interpretation. But yeah, so the things about him on display in that song are his almost like rapping, like of lyrics. Like he'll write lyrics to go really quickly, and so they're really intricate word flows, and there's not a lot of melody necessarily on all of them, but they just have this really. It helps like make them percussive or carry them like with forward momentum. But yeah, it actually my wife was telling me a few facts about it just in case I needed something to talk about. And she said that he actually usually talks about it as if his narrator is female, like a daughter of the guy. And that to me kind of changes the way I think about it. Cause yeah, I kind of thought of it as like, oh, here's the father, here's the brother, here's the son. They all end up kind of, with whatever this fatal flaw, the devil in their eye thing. But it does change a little for me if it maybe is like a daughter, because yeah, maybe she's going down kind of the same path, but it's going to lead her a different way. I don't know. I'll have to listen to it some more after that. But yeah, the Warren Zevon, it's funny because like I first heard of him through REM, like back before he had died. Like I guess they were great friends with him, and so I like picked up this album of his, and it kind of missed me. It didn't do that much for me. And Werewolves has never been my favorite song in the world either. So I was kind of like, Warren Zevon, okay, let's give it a listen. But yeah, that song's really good, I think, for sure. I don't know what it is, just about the whole package of it, but it really did work for me. So that was pretty cool. The Neil Young, I'm just not that guy for Neil. I can't really go to bat for him. And that's fine.
Yeah.
No big deal. But yeah, I did kind of think that like either the one like mixing the like solo style with the big band or the just straight big band song, those were like at least more interesting to my ear, I think. And then which one am I missing?
Little Rock.
Yeah, Little Rock. Yeah, yeah, I'm not a big country guy at all, so that one also kind of missed me. But I definitely felt like the writing and the like sentiments and the story of it were pretty on point. It wasn't like too sappy. It wasn't like, oh, and then the last day, even though I hadn't been drinking for only 19 days, we got back together and everything was fine. It didn't go there. So I respected that for sure. So, but yeah, as far as flowing, I definitely agree. Just front to back, it made a pretty good set.
Well, I think for me, we talked about this before, but sometimes transitions are important, and sometimes we don't even know what we're doing, and we throw the next song on. And as I listened to between Moon Over Bourbon Street and then going into the next song with the Neil Young, it was an abrupt ending for the Moon Over Bourbon Street, and then the piano came right in on the Neil Young, and it was a bluesy kind of a piano, and it works. I mean, it works on a lot of levels, that transition. And then both songs were somber and slow, kind of moving songs. And again, when we first put it on the playlist, and I was listening, I was just kind of like, oh, whatever. But as I've listened to it, I've appreciated it more. And those two songs kind of really, really go well together. And then, like you've already mentioned, I don't know how we do this, because at the time we probably weren't doing it. But with those next three songs, Desperados Under the Eaves and Little Rock and Henrietta, Indiana, man, you can't script that any better. I mean, I don't know how we came up with it, but it's genius. It's brilliant, because all three of them have a similar theme, whether they're in different genres or not. I wasn't familiar with the Warren Zevon track either. We've talked a little bit before. I want to get maybe more into Warren Zevon. I seem not just the Werewolves of London, but I love that song. And so I probably want to start trying to listen to some more of them. But this song was really, really good. But I didn't really pick up on the alcohol part where he says wake up in the morning, it's his hands shaking, and and all of that, and then goes into the Little Rock thing we've discussed already, where I do like the line in there where he says, Jesus would forgive, but a daddy won't forget. So there's something he did to her daughter, his daughter, you know, to his wife or whatever is, and I kind of like that. And the fact that again, yeah, it's a bit dated, and it's probably dated even with the lyrics because when you hear selling VCRs in Arkansas at a Walmart, you go, wow, really? That's a period piece for sure at that point. Um, but I thought they flowed real well together, and then man, I think we're probably all going to agree. I don't know if we will, but for me, the Henrietta, Indiana song was probably my favorite on the thing because it's such a surprise. I don't know Josh Ritter. I started trying to look him up a little bit, and as Spencer had mentioned, you know, there's some Christian based kind of things in there. I want to listen and go back and listen to some more of his music. Um, uh, and at first I didn't know it was a fictional town. At first I actually went and go, I'm going to look up Henrietta because I want to see how far away Putney is and how far they had to drive to get their alcohol.
Yep.
And but neither of them exist. So I'd imagine it's a little 20 or 30 minute jaunt outside of town, you know, to go to where it's not a dry place. Um, and like Spencer, how you mentioned like how it strings together some of the things like a thorn in the paw. Well, he had the devil in his eye, like a thorn in the paw, disregard for the law, disappointment to the Lord on high. And it's kind of like this little rappy kind of thing that, like you said, I liked that. I'm wondering though on the lyrics because I tried to go figure out what the real meaning and I couldn't find anything that broke it down. But when they say they came, you know, in the middle of the night and there was a shooting and they got the plates and then the media comes to his door. Did his dad do something? Did his dad go and off the deep end and kill somebody or three people? Or I guess that's what it kind of surmises. And then he's left to go, well, crap, what am I going to do? I guess I'll go to drinking as well. But he still has that you know, the disappointment from the Lord because he talks about how he has a Bible open to the Sermon on the Mount, and it's a never-ending vicious cycle of that. And you know, alcoholism is a tough deal. Any addictions are tough, and we see in our society today, it's not getting better. It's not getting easier, regardless of the substance or the thing that we're using to mask all of the problems and stressors and things that we're going through. And it's real. We all either have experienced ourselves because we're flawed, or we know people that have gone through that and in a real way. And so again, those three songs really made me start thinking about people I know and having to go through the cycle of addiction, really. And so anyway, those four songs for me were the highlight of the playlist.
Yeah.
Can I, before you get going, Jose, I'm sorry. It occurred to me, I don't know that I've named all the artists. Maybe we've done them, but I think did anybody say Colin Ray for Little Rock?
No, Colin Ray.
Want to make sure he gets his proper
he gets his
dues there.
Yeah.
So if I missed any others, or we missed any others, there'll be the list of songs at the beginning of the video.
And even though Colin Ray is kind of in that country and country Christian kind of thing, if you get a chance to listen, he's got probably like, I mean, 5 or 6 really, really good, well, I would call them hit songs, but popular songs that I go to. I don't have his albums. I didn't buy his albums, but for some reason on my playlist, I have 5 or 6 Colin Ray songs that are all great.
Okay. Yeah, that was a great song. I think that really struck a nerve with a lot of people on a lot of different levels. And, you know, like I said, being close to Indiana, you kind of understand that in a different way. Okay. And Dave talks about transition and how all these 4 songs, let me throw that out the window because that's what we do best around here. And of course, with the power of always being the first person, you tend to have that power. And of course, I went with Chocolate City by Parliament. We'll talk about it. And then Mike followed with Funky Kingston by Toots and the Maytals. And then The Night Chicago Died by Paper Place. And then
The only one of which was
Singapore.
actually charted as a #1 song. I'm going to just throw that out right now.
Oh yeah, well, you get your chance to defend. You'll get your chance to defend.
To defend.
We all get our chance to defend. But yeah, and then finally, Singapore by Tom Waits. So we'll all get a chance to defend. But I put on Chocolate City by Parliament, and yes, it's definitely a different song. But what I find it fascinating, I'm not going to get too deep into the history or anything of this stuff, but just to say that this kind of song, and it is a kind of dated song, is that African Americans in 1975, let's face it, we're coming out of the civil rights movement, and if you still believe that it's still going on, believe that. But he's trying to make a statement of how, hey, we need to come together as a group in order to continue to thrive. And this song kind of reflects that. Is it dated? Of course it is. But he even says the White House, but that's only temporary. And all of a sudden we have Barack Obama as president. So there are a lot of subtle things in there that he's talking about. But it's also an impactful song in the sense that, hey, we're making some waves here. Let's keep this moving. Let's keep this moving in a positive direction. And so, yes, is it your standard traditional song? Is it even a Parliament's traditional song? Not really. You're coming off Mothership Connection and Parliament Funkadelic and all that other stuff. And then all of a sudden you have this song that he's talking about, Chocolate City, and how the movement is moving forward, so to speak. And so that, and then Funky Kingston. Again, I gave Mike some crap, as far as that. But all of a sudden, as I listened to it more, it became one of my more favorite songs. And then I did a little research on it, like we all like to do, because all of a sudden we're like, what is this song really about? And you find out it's about working class oppression and the problems they have in Kingston, which has always been. And it's a reggae song, but let's face it, we all tend to think of reggae. Oh, Bob Marley. That's all we think about usually. Oh, Bob Marley. But no, there's other individuals like this that came out. Now, this is actually a cover. I didn't know that either, doing a little research. And so you find out these little things about these songs that you don't know about. And then, of course, The Night Chicago Died. I'll just say this, Dave. It's a great song when I was 12 years old. But it also triggers a song because it was a song that me and my brother, who's since passed away, Auntie or Tony, as y'all know him, it was one of our favorite songs. And when it came on the radio, we got all giddy with excitement because it was so different. And it's so, like, oh my God. Then the clock upon we love that. We just thought, oh man, this is great. It's that we requested for, and Dave will understand this on AM radio, and so we just thought it was a fun song, and so yeah, I had no problem. Singapore, could that fit into an HMS Pinafore? I'm just kidding. It's a unique song, and like Funky Kingstown, you start, what is the song about and what is he trying to say? And I really kind of fell in love with it after a while. I thought, no, this is Tom Waits doesn't care what he writes or what he puts out there. He doesn't care what you think about it. He's just going to put it out there and write a good song about it. And the lyrics are interesting as well. And I guess Singapore is kind of just more of a metaphor for places where people go that are kind of seedy and kind of, different exotic locations. But I kind of fell in love with the song after a while. I guess Tom Waits does that to you because you respect that he can put out a song like this and make it interesting. So yeah, again, 4 different unique songs, and I think we can do that later on, but 4 different unique songs that really, yes, do they flow? Probably not. But are they interesting? I will say very much so.
I agree. And there is a definite switch in tone there going into Chocolate City. And we've done that so many times before. It's like, it's not a wrong thing. Sometimes, okay, we got to kind of get out of the depressing, alcoholic, killing, whatever song. It's time to step it up a little bit. But it's it's in a way, Chocolate City, it is a serious. There's a lot of serious stuff behind that. I mean, like you said, that time period, things had not been great, and had been bad, and in some ways would get worse, and then would whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, when is it going to change? I'm sure, many people were thinking. And like you said, has it changed? Yes, we've had Obama, but you know, anyway, that song I like. I heard it years ago. Actually, yeah, I think it was in the '80s. But somebody I used to work with in a different town played that all the time. I just remember that CC thing he does, and I didn't.
Who's CC?
Well,
That's
okay, well,
Go ahead, Mike.
I didn't. I actually didn't complete. It was Chocolate City,
Right.
but it's more than that. And this didn't occur to me until in the car. It's DC. He's doing CC instead of DC, and so he names it Chocolate City. But he's talking about Washington D.C. And so I'm like, all these years, why didn't you know? I don't think I actively listened to it, so maybe it took that. But anyway, I don't go on. I like the song, and yeah, it's too bad that Richard Pryor and James Brown. At least we have Stevie Wonder still. Aretha Franklin's gone. All those people he names.
Ali.
Ollie. What? Yeah, but Funky Kingston. Basically, it had the name of the town, and it kind of it was on the upbeat. You know, it was like, okay, this will go good sound wise after the other one. Honestly, I don't think I've ever really thought about the lyrics all the many times I've listened to it. You know, I was kind of like groove into the groove. And since that came up, what is this about? Jose had opined that it was a dance. And I was like, I don't know about that, but it could be. I
It's got
kind
the
of,
working class. Yeah.
yeah. But then also it sounded kind of, for a while I was like, is he talking about he can't get ganja? I mean, it's like, don't ask me for any. I don't have any. Ask somebody else. I don't know. I'm probably wrong there too. But all I know is I like the song and the sound of it. So there's a number of songs that I listen to like that I'll sheepishly admit, you know, it's more for the sound than. And then what? Night Chicago Time. Yeah, I like Jose. When I was a kid, I did love that song. I mentioned this when we were making the playlist that about that age, roller skating was a big part of my life, and so they would play whatever the songs were at the time, and I distinctly remember hearing that. You know, also Bungle in the Jungle, if you're familiar with that, whatever. So Toots and the Maytals. I'm sorry, Paper Lace. I don't know if we actually said the name of the band. They did a couple other songs that got a little bit of airplay, but this one definitely did. And I've also kind of wondered, I didn't look it up, if this is based on any particular event or if it's like an English or whatever, Scottish, whatever band's view of what, you know, gangsters in Chicago. And then the last thing real quick, Singapore, that record, I got the tape again when I was working at Mother's with Spencer, or maybe a little bit before when you started there, but that was kind of my entry point into Tom Waits. And he actually, since then, has gone even more out there on some of his recordings. And so then I started going backwards and listening to the more melodic, you know, ballady things, which I put one or two on already. But I love that record, Rain Dogs. There's a couple songs I've been wanting to put on, so I'll probably get to them eventually. So thank you for that one too.
Yeah. I think I'm more in the camp with you, Mike, as far as like Chocolate City and the next song both being kind of more I would typically just have in, you know, my consciousness. Like I wouldn't really kind of sit and listen to as closely as maybe some other songs by some other bands or something. Especially, you know, Chocolate City with that groove just keeps the groove through the whole song, you know. So it's really easy to just kind of like let it fade into just like your being or whatever. It's also funny because there used to be this web character that in like the early 2000s or something like that, Strong Bad, that probably no one remembers or has ever heard of. But the guys who did that like web clip, you know, web video cartoon show, basically was what it was, I guess. They were also really into music, and so they would do songs sometimes and integrate them to have the characters of the web show sing the songs. And that little dun 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 piano like sting that gets in there kind of constantly throughout the verses. They actually stole that right out of that song and put it in this little funk song that they made for their characters to sing. And so the first like 3 or 4 times I was listening, I was like, why do I know that? And I was like, oh my God, those dudes lifted that for this dumb song that they made. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But yeah, the Funky Kingston, kind of the same. Like reggae was never huge for me, but you know, like definitely have it on and you know have it. It's a good kind of positive feel in the background, or like you know just when you're doing something. So yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, the the third song out of that, I guess I was not quite of an age to where I got exposed to that. I was kind of like really overprotected by my folks, so I didn't really listen to the radio at all until like 1981, I would say. So I think that would have been after that had already come and gone. So I had never heard it before, but yeah, the happiest song about gangland murders that's probably ever been written. But yeah, Singapore. I was same with Mike. Like I never heard of Tom Waits until I started working at Mother's in the kitchen, and I mean, I'll straight up admit, like my first take. I think I told somebody this, and I'm glad that I'm not friends with them anymore, or never. I don't know where they are because it's embarrassing. But I think I said to somebody like, "Oh, he's kind of like a knockoff Bruce Springsteen," because like I was hearing one of those like, you know, Downtown Train, like, you know, Blue Valentine kind of era songs, and he had less distinctive a sound. But man, that dude, once he got rolling, like Frank's Wild Years, you know, I mean, just so many albums that go so many different directions. One of my favorites, and we played this a lot too, he did an album called Nighthawks at the Diner. And it was basically like a fake little coffee house concert kind of thing. It's like he recorded the whole album live with a band and like some people there. So, I mean, I'm guessing it was fake because, you know, he could have done it that way. But anyway, so it's just a whole thing that's got a really live feel. And he does some like story songs and really long pieces in between where he talks, which is cool. But yeah, Singapore, I think it's kind of the archetype of the, you know, British Empire Navy, where like it was the Wild West, you know, like the pirates and the companies that just had wild amounts of power, people getting pressed into working on ships when they're just hanging out in port cities, you know, all kinds of crazy stuff like that. So yeah, it's just a really interesting song, and again, I think it leaves a little space for you to put your own spin on what you think is going on in some of the situations. I always like that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm going to talk about Singapore. I'm going to kind of talk about that one first, and then we'll work our way back to the really good songs like The Night Chicago Died. So first of all, I figured out, so Tom Waits, you know, it's an acquired taste. Mike's turned us on to a couple already, or like Burma Shave, I think was one of the ones we had. So starting to understand him, and it's just like Dylan and other things, you know, you have to get used to that voice, and or even Geddy Lee for, you know, Rush or whatever. They have a very distinctive voice. But I think I figured it out. Now he modulates across lots of different voices on kind of on this song, right? But when he's doing that grovelly kind of one, and you know, whatever, I figured it out. Now I'm not sure if you're a fan or not, but I think it's a cross between Cookie Monster and Oscar the Grouch.
Oh, jeez.
Okay. Oh, did I not?
I definitely agree.
I missed on that, or did I? Am I?
No, I mean, there's that same rhythmic element, you know, like you're talking about. Like Cookie Monster definitely does like a rhythmic kind of thing in his speech. So yeah, it's not too far off.
Okay,
That's why I thought it would fit in with like a HMS Pinafore or one of those Pirates of Penzance, where it's one of those kind of pirates,
Uh,
a little more hard edge. I'm not saying it's a Broadway musical song, but it has a story to it, and it's telling you something.
But like all of you said, it's like as I listened to it a few times, I'm like, this is pretty cool, you know. And if you really give it a chance and not just turn it off, it's a way cool song. Going back to the top to the Chocolate City, yes, I grew up in the vanilla suburbs, and probably still there to some degree. And so I can appreciate though that the time period of that was, and even the, you just have to be in the mood sometimes for the funk and for the upbeat, and we tend to do this sometimes where I don't think it's that we dropped a bomb on the playlist. I think we pivoted and shifted really quick to a different kind of thing, which the playlist sometimes needs. And with Chocolate City and Funky Kingston, and I'll even say to a degree, the night Chicago died, they all have some beat to it, and whether it's reggae or whether it's funk or whether it's the brilliant night Chicago died. Now the story of that as it goes was that there was the Al Capone and they're fighting, but there was some of that going on, but it wasn't against the cops. It was actually against a couple of rival gangs that were shooting each other up one night. It wasn't that 100 cops died. And from what I was able to research or whatever, the mayor of Chicago wasn't too happy with this song at the time, because it shed Chicago in a bad light. But it's a catchy tune. It's a popular tune. Like I said, it went all the way to #1 for a few weeks back in, what is it, 1974, I think. And as we said, I was about nine years old at the time. I'm not going to apologize for it, but I go back to that time and those mid-70s songs quite a bit. And why do I do it? One is I think they've endured, and I think they are pretty cool songs. And number two, it takes me back to my childhood. And so I like them because they're catchy. You can sing them, you remember them. I think that Paper Lace also did Billy Don't Be a Hero, I think was their other one. I think just another band covered it and then made it popular, but it was their song. And then going back to the Funky Kingston, again, that's a cool song. We always think of just the Bob Marley thing. That's probably the Peter Tosh kind of thing. I have a few of those albums, but I never heard of Toots and the Maytals at all. But they had a good groove and a good vibe. And like I said, I don't think that with these four songs they have to necessarily flow and go together, but they were all eclectic and different, and it made the playlist good, because when we shifted, it's like, oh, this is something different, this is something cool. And so anyway, I thought it was a good four songs.
Right. And I think we continued that in the final four songs. We start with I start with An Open Letter to NYC by the Beastie Boys, and then London Girl by the Pogues, and then Leningrad by Billy Joel, and then Ding Dong. We'll get into that, and we'll get into all these songs, of course. And like I said, I started with Beastie Boys. This is a far cry from when they were licensed to ill and they were only to fight. They wanted to fight. Obviously, they'd matured at this point. They were trying to make a statement about New York City after this came out in 2004, and the after effects of 9/11, of course, and how the city kind of came together. And I will say that they did it in a sense. And from someone who visited New York City pre 9/11 to someone who has visited it, it's really dramatically different. And I just kind of saw that firsthand. And then we went with the Pogues. Mike has given us a lot of songs about the Pogues, London Girl, and this song's one of those. I guess now that I'm saying a classic Pogue song, and Mike can talk about more. And then Leningrad by Billy Joel. I really initially didn't. I had to really go look this up to see what this song was about, because there was such a variety. And then I find out it's about this Russian clown who made it through the war. Then he became friends with Billy Joel, but how they saw the Cold War on opposite ends, which was kind of fascinating, actually. And I guess they eventually met up when he did a concert in Leningrad, and then he came and went to Billy Joel. So anyway, Dave can get into that if he wants. And then I'm a ding dong. What is sometimes I've been listening to Dr. Demento. I felt when I was listening to, but it's the roots of Texas, of Texas music and Texas country, and it's important whether you like the song, whether you don't like the song, whether you think it's silly, where you think it's still a part of Texas history, and because of that, it works on that level. And yeah, am I going to go be playing this every 5 minutes? No, but do I understand the importance of it? Of course I do. So I thought, again, sure. Did any of these songs flow together? Doubtful. Did they all? But they are all interesting and all important. I think so.
So I'll just get right into it. The Beastie Boys, for the longest time, I really didn't like them, and it really was their original, well, their first radio play, which was the "Fight for Your Right" party, which I don't know. I was such a music snob when I was 19 or whatever, 20, whenever that came out. It's like, come on, man, get over it. Some of the stuff I've listened to is basically the same sentiment. And so I didn't give them a chance for quite a while. And then I worked with people that would play them. And this song is just, yeah, it's just so far beyond that. I mean, it's slick, and I don't want to make it sound bad by saying slick and professional. It's just like really well done. And they just blend all these different clips. And I know they did on a lot of other stuff too, samples and stuff, but really it's of all the songs, it's probably the one, from what I now understand, was the intent of this playlist was like to really focus songs on, a city. And this one is like they talk about, all the boroughs or whatever, and they talk about the different ethnicities and, sure the 9/11, the Twin Towers. But they also talk about how the town, we're persevering, that town's going to go on. So I say this so often, and I guess we all do. I've got to give them more of a chance. They're way back there now in time, but I need to check them out. That was a great song. I liked it. It was a surprise. I was not expecting to like it as much as I did. London Girl, I've been kind of going through my Pogue songs. That's not my favorite. It's not one of my favorite records by them, which I believe was produced by Elvis Costello. And that may have another song or two that I put on. But, this kind of pop hit. I read somewhere that they kind of started to hate playing this song because it was always requested. It got a lot of airplay, especially in London, England. But I think it's great. It brings in a little bit of, how they, from some of the other songs, they're not just doing Irish stuff. I mean, they have not even fully an Irish band, but they, the accordion, they've had kind of the Zydeco thing going. There's a little bit of that here, I guess. But they've had all kinds of different things they brought in. And so I thought it was a fun little song, and I've been wanting to use it, and it's a city. So there you go. Leningrad, I know I'd heard it, but I had forgotten about it. And just a couple of things I want to say about that, and I'll try to be real brief. The first, like the opening notes sound so familiar. And I tried to look this up. I didn't find anything, but I felt like it maybe was in some piece of classical music by a Russian composer, but I don't know. I mean, he's a very good songwriter. It most likely is him, but anyway. But I've been to Russia. I've also been to Ukraine on the same trip. They were both the Soviet Union, and we didn't go to Leningrad. There was a chance we were going to, and it didn't work out. And now I don't suppose the way things are going, that's probably going to happen. Of course, it's now St. Petersburg, but there's so much history there. He references a little bit about his dad, the clown, Victor, is it? His dad he's born. That's the last he sees of his dad. And Leningrad was just terribly, terribly hit. I don't know how I was surrounded by the Nazis. Basically, were trying to starve the people in the town, city, and they, to a large extent, were successful. Yet they survived and went on. And okay, now this is a little on a tangent, but I heard this story once. Actually, I've seen it in a couple of documentaries. There's a very famous art museum, the Hermitage, Hermitage, whatever. It's just like huge, full of famous works of art. And when the Stalin was in charge there, and the Soviet Union at the time, and when the Germans were advancing, they basically they took all the art and put it someplace safe where they thought it would be safe, but they left the frames up in a lot of cases, and kind of a way that people kind of try to rise above and find some life out of it. They would still give tours and describe the paintings that were in those frames. I always thought it was such a cool story, but yeah, it's sweet, of course. Meeting this guy, and he makes his daughter laugh, and so that was a great choice. Ding Dong Daddy from Dumas, Bob Wells. All right, I'm going to be a staunch defender of this song. I love Bob Wells. I don't know if you'd heard of him before, Spencer, when I used to play it like crazy at Mother's. But
I don't think so.
I'm sure not
that's
that
probably
song.
where I first heard it.
And this song I didn't even know at the time. I had this Rhino Records 2 CD thing, and so a lot of it take me back to Tulsa and Rose of San Antonio and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is a funny song. He's obviously up to a lot of no good, and he listed, surprising for those days. I don't know if this is the 40s or 30s when he did this, talking about he can sell you heroin or something like speed or coke, or of course his specialty is liquor, which might have been during the Prohibition era. I don't know. And, yeah, but this is Western swing. That really is what he was. This music was kind of the beginnings of, not completely these guys, but and if you listen to it after a while, there's a lot of parallels with kind of some of the big band music, the orchestrated jazz kind of stuff that came along at the same time, swing and such. So yeah, I'll defend you. I've gone through Dumas. I can't imagine there's much to do there, besides whatever he's doing. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'll take up the defense then and work my way backwards through the songs. Yeah, it's funny. So no one associated with Bob Wills wrote this song. He didn't write it. It was an existing song. So there was this songwriter that somehow ended up in Dumas at some point. I forget. I read it on Wikipedia, but this guy writes the song about Dumas, Ding Dong Daddy from Dumas. And the person who actually recorded it first that made it famous was a big band leader. It was it Phil Harris, the band leader for Jack Benny, that radio show guy way back in the day? It was something Harris. I think it was Phil Harris. But anyway, so there was already an existing hit from it. And I looked that up, and the lyrics were completely different. Like Bob Wills totally rewrote at least 75% of that for his version. So I get the feeling it was kind of like a popular song that everyone would hear out and about, and he just wanted to do like their spin on it. But yeah, also musically, it was quite different. I listened to the original, an original-ish recording from the guy who wrote it, and it didn't have any of the kind of Texas swing sound like that. So I thought that was kind of funny. Yeah, I just had assumed, like, I don't know, I guess this is a song Bob Wills played all the time early on, and it really kind of wasn't, I guess. But yeah, it was funny because in his later songs, he doesn't really sing like that much. He'll do a little phrase here or there. He'll do like he kind of has some kind of disorder where he's just like making noises periodically. But yeah, he doesn't sing that much. So that was interesting too. But yeah, my personal story about Dumas, I drive, or I have driven back and forth a number of times to get to Boulder, Colorado, where my sister lives. And one of the times I went through, we had to stop, you know, overnight, and I had my dogs with me. So I'm walking my dogs at night, and I just start hearing this meowing sound coming from a little shrub tree, you know, by this parking lot. And I kind of, I'm like, okay, there's a cat. So I, you know, get the dogs away and go pull this little kitten out of the tree. Mom is nowhere, dad is nowhere, you know. So I end up with this cat from Dumas, Texas, and I had to round trip it. I had to finish the trip up to Boulder and then bring it back to Austin. So
You're a cat rescuer too?
I've done dog adoptions, and yeah, you know, cats mostly just from like the SPCA or whatever. But yeah, one of my favorite dogs, to really further go on a tangent, was this like white pit bull who had like one black or one brown eye and one blue eye, and stone deaf. I mean, this dog was stone deaf. And you never realize how cute it is to see a dog dead asleep until you realize that you never get to see them that way. Because, like, if you get home, your dog is like, oh, you know, there to see you. So I'd get home, and there'd be one dog that was there that was just like laying there like they were a sack of potatoes, you know. And it was, I don't know, it was pretty endearing. But anyway, so yeah, that was Dumas. Let's see. Now I'm losing all the other songs. Let's do London Girl. So that was an outtake from Rum, Sodomy, and the Lash. Like they added it later as like an extended edition kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. As far as you know, we're concerned, it had been. I think it was a single that was out, and people have done that. Like McCartney added Helen Wheels to Band on the Run. I think Money may have been added to Dark Side of the Moon. I'm not 100%, but you know, yeah, a song, and then it'll be, yeah, it'll take a life of its own. But yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fun little song, you know. I mean, I'll listen to the Pogues anytime. I don't think, I'm glad they didn't have it on that album originally, because I don't think it fits in any way, shape, or form. But you know, that's another thing.
Kitty.
Yeah, this is not that same cat. That was a long time ago. But all right, help me out. What was the first one of this quadrant?
Open letter.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was definitely struck by that one as being like, I mean, that could be like a Chamber of Commerce song, right? Like that is just straight up, like we're going to talk about New York here, people, you know. And it works a lot considering how like focused it is. And you know, usually songs that are that much of a message, or you know, something like that, you know, I don't have as much use for as some other songs. But yeah, I thought that was a really cool, and obviously, you know, they're iconic among Americans for, you know, being from New York City and kind of being ambassadors and stuff like that. So yeah, it was pretty cool listening to that song. And then
Leningrad.
There you go, Leningrad. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I wondered how much truth there was in that story. You know, how much he was taking liberties, or how much he was just sort of straight up, you know, talking out something out of his own experience or whatever. So that's definitely pretty cool. I guess I should have known that because he had that Downeaster Alexa song that's also, you know, off of a Russian word, I guess, and kind of a story like that. So he must have really been going through a lot of feelings about, you know, the Cold War and eventually the end of the Cold War. But yeah, it's a pretty cool little song. You know, not a huge Billy Joel fan, but that was definitely a pretty solid song, I thought. So let me throw in one thing that I forgot back in the beginning. So when we were doing Walking in Memphis by Mark Cohn, when I was thinking about that song, and I was well acquainted with it, you know, in 1992 or whatever, and liked it quite a bit, you know, but re-listening to it, I kind of now mentally put it in the same category as like Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, or even Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For by U2. And specifically, and I dropped a link in the chat to Mike that he might be able to put in somewhere for people to reference. But there's a YouTube clip that you can watch. So after, that song was such a big hit for them from the Joshua Tree album, their next album was Rattle and Hum, which was sort of off of a live documentary that they did. And the clip that I have the link to, they did a gospel version of that song. And it's on the Rattle and Hum soundtrack, but it's a different version. That's a version from when they were playing Madison Square Garden in New York. And they have the gospel choir there, but it's a little differently arranged and it sounds a little different. But this clip is from their rehearsal, their first rehearsal of it in the church with the gospel choir that they do it with. And I was telling my wife earlier, you could have like knocked me over with a feather when I was sitting in a theater watching Rattle and Hum. And, this song that I've heard 5,000 times at this point, right? And I love, and it has definitely sort of mystical and almost spiritual feel to it. But to hear them do that in that different context, it just, and it brought all these things to mind of like songs that might not be, necessarily religious or Christian or any particular thing, maybe not even that spiritual, but certain things about things like gospel music, like singing a cappella, some of the harmonies. I don't know. There's forms that, get followed just in how music comes into being that I feel like can take songs to like this completely different place. And I feel like his song is kind of like that. Because it's kind of like about just a song about him struggling, but by the end when like the gospel choir kicks in and, that great repeating piano part, you don't even really still remember that by the end of that song. I don't know. It's a pretty great accomplishment. But anyway, that just struck me earlier. So hopefully Mike can share that link to YouTube and people can check that out.
That's U2, Rattle and Hum, and it was a live album, or
it was both a live album and a movie, like a documentary. And both came out, I want to say like late 1988, because Joshua Tree came out in 1987.
It was more 90 because I went to I specifically seeing it for the first time with Rosemary and San Marcos. And here's the thing, I didn't like U2. I hate to say that, but I wasn't into all their, which is great stuff. It's masterpiece stuff. And yes, I go back and you listen to it and you realize it. But my first introduction was seeing that Rattle and Hum movie and then realizing, what am I missing here? I'm a moron for, missing really all their early stuff. Even Rosemary had gone to a show in '86 in Austin at the Frank Erwin Center, coincidentally enough. But when I first went to see that movie, I was like, okay, I get it. I understand now. So just a little insight. Again, the things we're exposed to.
I'm kind of the same way. I wasn't really that into them, other than some of their hit songs and that kind of thing. But I'm gonna go check it out. Bono is Bono, and I'd like to hear that version of it. You mentioned the gospel sound. A lot of people were trying to duplicate that too. And you're right. Once you hear that, it's just a different kind of way. When you start hearing gospel choirs and stuff like that jumping in, when you were saying that, I don't know why this popped into my head, but even like Madonna doing Like a Prayer, that kind of thing, where they just start doing all the, with the gospel choirs and stuff like that. It was a big thing at that in that time frame. But these four songs, they didn't go together, which is okay. I think that's the beauty of it. They Open Letter to New York City. I'm not a big Beastie Boys fan. I've said that a couple times. I don't know if a couple other songs, but like you said, it's just like a tribute to New York City, and it was pretty cool. I liked it. I listened to it a few times. The London Girl and the Pogues. I guess I need to be in the mood at times for the Pogues. I was looking at the lyrics though, and some of them just I don't know. you know, McGowan, you got, you know, he's acquired taste, just like we talked about with Tom Waits and with others. I've started to listen to a little bit more of them, but there's one where he says, "To the muse running through the back streets where the blacks sold fire and sleep." What does that mean? That's pretty deep, but
Yeah, I like that lyric. Actually, in fact, I singled it out. I think it's, obviously selling drugs. They're either selling cocaine or heroin, fire or sleep. Not that I'm knowing all the drug slangs of the world, but I think that's what that means. I'm just gonna throw it out there.
So again, that was one of the things. Maybe I didn't understand it, but I like the fact that they were using some different ways to describe what's going on in this. And then again, it wasn't really about London so much as the London Girl kind of thing. But again, it's a good tune. I'm going to skip over Leningrad and I'll finish up with that one. So the Ding Dong Daddy from Dumas. I like some of that too. I like some of the older country and some of that Texas swing kind of stuff. I've been through Dumas. I don't know how many times because I live in Colorado now, hometown San Antonio, and I'm telling you, I've probably driven that Dumas Dalhart upper text line stretch 30 times or something over the years. Not much going on in Dumas, but now that I understand that there could be some drug trafficking going on there, may get sheds Dumas in a whole new light for sure. All I know is when we go through Dumas and Dalhart, we roll up our windows for whatever reason. That's the smell you get from two things. One is all the agriculture and that kind of thing, and I think there may be like a paper mill or a paper plant or something there, which has a distinct smell to it. So when we're driving through the Panhandle up there, we roll up our windows. And then the last one, or the one I put on, was Leningrad. And as I said earlier, it wasn't because of these other songs that were being played. It just was one that I had on my list, and I wanted to feature the piano. So I did that with Walking to Memphis, Little Rock, and Leningrad. Not so much with The Night Chicago Died. I went off tangent on that one just because of where we were at with those eclectic 4 songs. But I went back to the piano with Billy Joel, and I'm a big Billy Joel fan, and I think this one was off Stormfront in the late 80s, 1989. So you're right, they had that little bit of the Cold War kind of thing that was going on. When did the wall get torn down? When was the Berlin Wall?
89.
89. So it was right around that same time. But this song is very autobiographical. You already mentioned about the story and Victor, and like I said, I think they had met, and then he wrote about the song, and then they went to Leningrad, and then years later he did concerts in the Soviet Union, and that's where they linked back up again, and the story came out about this guy who went through all that. He lost his dad early on. He grew up. He went into the Russian army. He served his time there. Came out all through all this, and then you kind of get back to the point where, hey, at the end of the day, they're human, we're human, right? And we just grew up in a different time, in a different place, with being enemies, essentially, right? And that's where he came together. And he said he became a clown. And when they got together, he made his daughter laugh, and they shared an embrace, and they made friends from that. So I thought it's a cool song, and I've always wanted to figure out a place to put it on. And then when we did cities, I said, okay, I'll put it on Leningrad, but you're right, it's not a current city, right? It's got switched to something else. So that's where we have some regrets. So I'm going to throw it out, even though I know, Jose, you're kind of moderating. So what other city songs did we not include, like Istanbul, Constantinople? We talked about that before.
Tulsa Time by Eric Clapton. There's that out there. What other songs? I had a list, but yeah, there are a bunch of songs.
We mentioned Werewolves in London, and
right.
I had a couple of probably sappier songs, like you probably would have torn me down, like with The Night Chicago Died. But I had like Please Come to Boston. I don't know if you remember that song in the 70s. I had that on my list. I had Luckenbach, Texas, so I could have done the Texas thing, with that. So those were and I also had Jackson by Johnny Cash and June Carter. So those are some of my others didn't make the playlist.
Well, I think we could have did a whole one just on New York City.
Yeah, there were several others, and I had some New York songs as well. Jackson was high on my list. The live at whichever was San Quentin or Folsom County or whatever, Folsom Prison. One that okay, Pflugerville. I live in Pflugerville. There's a song called Pflugerville. It would have drawn all kinds of disdain from you guys, and it may yet make it on. It's a comedy song, but the Austin Lounge Lizards, they're an acquired taste. I don't know if they're even around anymore. But the one I really left off, and there wasn't a place for it, was Galveston, which if you may know Glenn Campbell, right? And when I was a kid, I heard it a bunch on the radio. It was one of those that's crap my parents listened to. I don't want to hear that. And only years later did I kind of listen to it and really listen to the lyrics. It's about a guy in Vietnam. He doesn't think he's going to make it back. He's probably not going to make it back, and talking about his hometown and the girl he left behind. And it's written by Jimmy Webb, who wrote Wichita Lineman and whatever that one Art Garfunkel did, All I Know, and then the very good MacArthur Park, if you're familiar with that one. If not, check it out, Richard Harris. It is much fun.
If you get a chance to listen, when I was doing the research for it, I almost put on Galveston. There's Jimmy Webb version of it is a slower version of the Glenn Campbell one, but it features Lucinda Williams in it, and so and it's a pretty cool version.
Yeah, and I don't want to go much on about this, but I like his song versions of a lot of these songs because he's a talented pianist and singer as well, in addition to the songwriting. And so yeah, he has a bunch of his songs that he's I think one record's called 10 Easy Pieces, or it's a play on that Nicholson movie title. But yeah, anyway, there's more. But you have anything, Spencer, you thought of putting on that didn't make it?
Yeah, I mean, I had New York City by They Might Be Giants because I'm a huge fan of theirs. I didn't really feel like there was a good fit for it, so that stayed out.
Those last 8 songs you couldn't have.
There's no fit up there on the tail end.
Yeah, I was still trying. I was still trying to live the dream. Well, and plus I really wanted to get Ding Dong Daddy in there. The other thing I found, so I also had a Lucinda Williams song queued up and didn't use it because she got taken sort of early. But when I was looking back in her music, she has city names of songs on just about every record she's ever put out. And I guess it's kind of like her style of storytelling of relationships, a guy that she knew in wherever or that left to go to wherever or whatever. But yeah, I just thought that was funny. I was like, man, she's got 7 or 8 just by herself. So yeah, but it definitely seems like you could revisit and pick on the bones of some of these. Well, some of y'all said you had 150 songs or 80 songs ready for that one. So
I think when we were doing the playlist, you mentioned a song called Omaha by the Counting Crows, and I wasn't familiar with it until I started looking for songs about cities, and I came across that one, and that's a pretty cool song.
Yeah, I dig that.
I'll just throw out there, and there's also Chicago by Graham Nash or Crosby, Stills Nash that no one used, so it's kind of interesting. But it's I'll go full circle here and say that when we first started thinking about this and we used places, that we realized how many real songs there are about different places, and I think cities found in that category, and I'm sure we'll revisit it at some time in the future. So I think overall this one was really good. We had a lot of great different variety on all this for sure. I really like the first 8 songs, how they all flow together. A lot of great stories. I mean, we're all people who like a great story and great lyrics, and that's what I really enjoyed about a lot of these is just there's certain lyrics in each of these songs, that really stand out sometimes, And I'm sorry I missed the the Cohen train. Who knew that was me? Sorry about that. So if y'all want to add anything else, if not, we can wrap it up and go from there.
Just say thanks again, Spencer, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. I like your style, your song selections, your interpretation of songs. So spot on. Appreciate you joining us.
Thanks for letting me be on. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope you'll return at some point, I'm sure. So, okay,
good.
guys.
I could say all the same thing.
Yep. Happy Father's Day to y'all who are fathers. And we'll see you next time.